Hey everyone, I wanted to come out and give you some encouragement of things which are to come as we look back at a little boy's vision that was given a few years back when he was 7 years old. And I hold this vision dear to my heart because I truly do believe that it's true, as many children have had very similar dreams and visions of these things. So he talks about here as he's writing to me that, there was parts that he said in the video, and when I recorded it, I let him say what he felt, as he didn't want to add none of his own thoughts. And the order of things was not as it was in the video, but I let him do it. But this is the things that he shared, so I thought it would be encouraging. Some things were not shared because we didn't understand. And I know I missed so much. And he feels so bad. But he does share that when my son had these visions, as they were kneeling down at night and saying their prayers and getting ready for bed, he said his son started to look upwards in the room and stared for a few seconds. Not long, between 5 to 15. But every time he turned and looked at me and started telling me things for 2 to 5 minutes. And he started with, "Dad, do you know that bench that you and Jesus will sit and talk on?" There had been a bench that Dad had shared with his son and talked about. He said, "Well, there's another place there where everybody will sit and listen to Jesus." And then he said, "Dad, I am on one side of the bench, and I can talk to and see the one who is on the other side of the bench, far, far away." But then there was something about words in heaven, but I don't remember it well because I was staring and thinking, what's going on here? Is he really seeing this? Is he talking to Jesus? And I remember it well because I was staring to think, wow, is this for real? And then he looked up again and he turned and he said, "Dad, there is a table that comes down from heaven and we will eat. It's full of food, Dad. Did you know you can take one thing and there will be a new thing right away? And all my favorite things are there. But not just mine, Dad. Yours and everyone else's favorite too." Then I looked up again and turned and he said, he looked at me, "Dad, there will be 3 times every year in heaven that we will have a party. It will be our birthday in heaven. We will all have the same birthday." I missed so much because my mind started to think about scriptures and the things that I had thought about and talked to the Lord about. But my son was talking about the fruits in heaven, the trees bending down, how they would taste, the things that he knew, and many new ones that he couldn't understand or even talk about. But that one fruit could have many tastes, like a banana on one part and a strawberry on another. And some have both and many more just on one fruit. And then he looked up for a while and he turned and he said, when we are taken up, we look at what will happen on earth. We can, but God said we don't have to. but we can. And after the second time people come up, Jesus said, He really don't want us to look, but if we want to, it's okay. But when the last people come up, Dad, Jesus said, we're not allowed to watch anymore. It will be very bad, Dad. He looked up and he turned to me and he said, Dad, after a year, and Jesus will say, come here, children. And everybody gathers by Jesus. And he opens the door. And we all go in. It's a garden. And there's a tree. Oh, it's very ugly. And it has rotten fruit. And it is dark and not like the others. And Jesus said to Adam, do you remember this tree? Adam didn't, but then Jesus allowed him to remember, and Adam looked so sad. Then Jesus takes us back out by the door again and closes the door. Then the next day, Dad, did you know that there are days in heaven, but not nights? Did you know that, Dad? And then the next day, Jesus opens the door again, and we're all in there again. But there isn't that ugly tree anymore. It's a new tree that is very beautiful, Dad. Jesus says, this is for my children to eat from. And there are words in the tree, Dad, and a star or light above it. And then he looks up and he tells me the part in the video about the words of fire that come out of Jesus' mouth. The next day, while he was playing, came the vision part where he saw the rapture and how it would look. And then the vision when he saw the part of when the mountain crumbled. The last would look up, and then the vision where he saw the part where the mountain crumbled. That part was when Jesus asked him, do you know what I'm showing you? Do you know what this is and what this means? And my son smiled. He's still looking up at Jesus. And my son looked at me and told me this and smiled. And he said, yes, I understood that I will grow up in heaven. And then Jesus smiled, Dad. But then he got very serious, Dad. He wasn't angry, but very powerful. And he said, it's enough. I'm coming for my children now. Then after we did the video, later that night my son was getting some explosions, he called them. He said they came from his heart. Vibrations? When he went through his body like chills, he said. My son said they felt good, but very intense. And it was so powerful that every time the chills that came through his body shook, and his body was shaking. Wow, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And even my son said, God said it's too much for me. There was a thin light in the room that moved around like wave movements. But you only noticed it at certain times, but you felt it. And there was an amazing peace and calm in the room, and it was all around us. So hard to explain. And then he fell asleep, and all I could do was weep and pray over him and praise God. And I did this until I felt like he was asleep and I was tired and I went to sleep as well. It was a while. It took him about 2 days until he told me what happened that night. Because I didn't push him. He said to me that when he was taken up to heaven to see things, I asked him if he was allowed to talk about it. And he said yes. And the first thing he said was that everything in heaven has its own light. I was even putting sugar in my coffee. And he used the sugar to explain. He said, Dad, do you know that sugar has a glow? It's not just one thing, but everything in it glows. It was living, Dad. He said, then the angel showed me houses in heaven, and I saw yours and Mom's and Grammy's. And I asked him, what did my house look like? He said it was a nice house. And I asked him what color. He said, well, we don't have that color here on earth, so I don't know what to call it. And then he got to see a house of a family member. And he explained that. And then he also said that Jesus told him that he could build his own house. He's always wanted to build his own home and dreamed about it. He said he would build it out of nothing. It would just appear like planks and windows. And I asked him if this was his own house. And he said that the angel had told him that God knows everything about him. He even knows his prayers. My son had prayed if he could build his house in heaven. Well, it looks like he will. My son was talking about the angels that talked to him. And so I asked, did you talk to God? And my son said, the angel told me that he can't listen to God's voice. His presence in this form, because it would hurt him. God's voice is so powerful for him right now. But after his body changes, we all can talk to God directly. And then he said, I saw God's house too. It was the biggest, and it looked like Hercules' home. I laughed a little and I said, Hercules' home, like from Disney? And he said, yes, only bigger and better. I asked, what made you think of Hercules? And he said, well, the white pillars that Hercules' house had, God also has. And then he said he got to see animals and birds, and they were all shining. The trees, the grass, the flowers were shining. I forget, but he said something. And my son said that it was not allowed to say everything. But I was asked about some family members. That's when he said that he couldn't tell me at all. So then I went and I saw that many others had dreams and visions and children, and I remembered a little boy named Gabriel. So we started to share that vision with his son. And when he was sharing it, he named the little boy that had it. And his son said, oh yeah, I think the angel who talked to me was named Gabriel as well, Dad. So I didn't push him for anything or any information. I just wanted him to tell it like he saw it. I pray that this blesses you all. Peace out from Texas. Let's remember and keep looking up. Maranatha, our King is coming.